Associate Professor in International Studies at the University of Canberra. Her main areas of focus are human rights and civil liberties and social issues and public policy. Dr. Tahmina is a recipient of the Asia Fellow Award 2004-5, and she's also a Fulbright Scholarship winner in the year 1996. Tonight, Dr. Rashid will be speaking about domestic violence in a South Asian context, looking at some causes and also the impacts of things like cultural practices, religion and gender roles. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome her warmly.
Thanks, Siobhan. As an Australian migrant who migrated from Pakistan and have been in academia for over 30 years now, talking about violence still the way I saw it when I started working a long time ago is really very troubling, I would say. When we talk about violence in the public space, we know that there are laws that regulate our behavior, hence they prevent us and we don't do it. In the privacy of our homes, when the arm of the law is not there, when there is no surveillance, and this is where the problems arise. The reason Asia is important, and because of my own work, a lot of examples that I would take are not only from my work, but what I have heard around me, and I continue to hear around me. And I'll share a recent survey in 2013 that was done in Asia, and some of the things actually that we will unpack from it. Around 30% women from Pakistan agreed that men have a right to beat them, and they are justified in beating if women talk back, if they ignore kids, if they ignore in-laws, if they don't cook well and burn food or refuse to have sex with their husbands. A similar kind of work with young men in Pakistan actually said that around 60% of young people feel that it's okay to hit their wives, and I'm talking about young men, not about young women here now. We can always dismiss that a lot of things happen and people don't know, hence many societies, they actually justify that kind of violence, just tend to ignore it. Fast forward Australia, and I was talking to a GP here, and we were talking about a woman of Pakistani origin here. It took me 3 weeks to get her phone contact from somebody so that we can actually tell her what kind of services ACT government has in place, including crisis accommodation, counseling services and legal support programs. Even after 3 weeks, when I finally got her number, it came with the advice from the person who gave me the number and said to me, please try and pray that they get back together. I spoke to that woman and this is how she explained her husband's behavior. She said he is a barbarian, and from sexual violence to verbal and physical abuse, everything went on in their house until she had it enough and she called the police. And here a community is saying that we should pray and do something so that they get back together. And this person is not alone, because a lot of times the way in Asian context, the way boys are raised and the way girls are raised. Girls are supposed to sacrifice, for example, the good portion of food. They have to do and be in the service of their brothers or the male family members from a very early age on. Women's sacrifices are really very valued. Women are supposed to be custodians of culture. Hence, whatever happens in the private space, they have to keep it there and not talk about it. When girls are married, and I'm talking about Asia, a lot of time the advice that they get from their families is, that we are marrying you off, so you should make compromises. And there is a saying which I have honestly no way to translate into English, but it actually means that you are going alive to the family of your in-laws, you should only come back dead. Effectively, it is saying that no matter what happens, you are gone for good and there is no support. And with that kind of mindset, and it's very recent in Asia that we had domestic violence as criminal offense. Killing a woman is still debated in Pakistan, and I don't think that we should continue to wait for more women to be killed to change the laws or behavior, and not tell our boys, it's not on to hit another person, it's not on to hit your sister, it's not on to hit your wife. And because most of the time in Asian communities we fail to do that, there is a lot of pressure on women to make these compromises and accommodation. Many years ago in Melbourne University, during a session, somebody said that because among migrant communities there is a lot of pressure when people migrate, men, their qualification is not acknowledged, and then because they are providers, this is how they are raised. Hence, when they can't actually fulfill their duties of being a provider, being the patriarch of the family, in that frustration they hit their family members, particularly their wives. So I asked that person that I was teaching in a university in Pakistan, I had a good job. When I migrated, I had my rite of passage unemployment phase. And I asked her that if in that unemployment phase, when I was struggling to get a job and I was equally frustrated, if I had hit my husband, would anybody have supported that it is justified? Because it is happening that way. So why violence has to be justified if it is inflicted on a woman by a man and not vice versa? I'm not suggesting that there is no violence on men in Asian communities, because I have seen and I have helped somebody who migrated from Pakistan as a spouse who was confined in the house, sent back forcefully, and eventually he came back and he has settled in Australia, has gone through domestic violence as a man. A lot of time men don't talk about it. A lot of time when we have all these services in place and we have that levy now, we as Asians, because we are working here, a lot of time we see a lot of violence in our own communities and we don't talk about it. Even GPs don't talk about it. We say that if there is a sign in the school, teachers would see it and they would report it to the police. That perhaps happens more often as opposed to when a GP sees a woman from the community and she notices, and sometimes it's very visible, at times even women actually share the kind of violence they are experiencing with them, and GPs don't report it because it's a matter for the community and they don't want to involve in community matters. And this is where a lot of problems arise. In addition to that, there are other factors that complicate the whole issue. As Asian communities, we are migrants, and as migrants, we all know that there is a lot of pressure on having that good image, of the image of a law-abiding citizen who have made Australia their home and want to portray that kind of image of their community, hence would not want to report it because the way media projects it, and people, particularly Muslim communities also from Asia, they feel that we are already under siege. Hence, if any domestic violence issue or any violence issue actually makes it to the headline, it makes us feel more bad. And that kind of feeling that we have to have that image of good citizens, law-abiding citizens, prevents a lot of people from coming forward, reporting that kind of violence that they have experienced or they are seeing other people experiencing around them. In addition to the cultural factors that I just talked about, the way girls are treated, the way the girls and boys are raised, even here in Australia, we see the kind of discrimination that is being practiced within the home when girls are raised. And I'm not saying that every household is like that, but a good number of households that I am aware of, it works like that. What boys can do and what girls can do and can't do is way different from how life should be, where the girls can't actually go on a school camp while the brother can go. So this is kind of how they are raised, how their culture, the appropriateness of culture is ingrained in the minds of these girls, that they have kind of accepted that they are kind of inferior to their boys or male family members. Hence, they are the ones who have to make these compromises in a relationship situation as well. When they got married, if they are working, still a lot of time we see that even when women are working, that kind of disadvantages if they are raised in those families. And in situations where women are not working, then finances become a big constraint on them and they are pushed into living in those abusive relationships, because they are culturally trained that way. The families won't accept, there is not much support within the community. And then there is gossip around it, that kind of simmering kind of sniding comments that people would make, and people think that they can't even share that kind of thing outside of their family members and they don't want to talk about it. And that's why in our community we need to talk about it more often so that people can talk about violence and deal with it, because unless we talk about it, we won't be able to deal with it. Now, when we look at some aspects of religion, and I'm not here only talking about the religion of Islam, I'm talking about religion or faith groups within Asian context, not particularly about Muslims. The status of women in a lot of orthodox conservative interpretations is where women have a lower status. So if women have a lower status, then that means that men have kind of control over them. If women are less of a citizen before they were coming to Australia, or even in Australian context when they are raised in these households, if they are not considered full citizens or men are not actually trained to consider them as equals, then that means that these half citizens won't think of actually about them as full citizens who have a right and control over their bodies and are entitled to have a peaceful, loving relationship. And in that kind of scenario, it becomes even harder for these women who have migrated and men who have migrated in situations where men are full citizens while women are half citizens, where women are known or publicly known to be in relation to a man. So they are daughters, they are wives, they are mothers. They are not full individuals, full citizens as entities. And once they migrate, both men and women, they don't leave that behind, that the moment actually you cross the border, you have become a new person and you have left those identities and those cultural complexities behind you. You bring it with them. And all those complexities are here with us, where we are seeing women in relationship to a man. If at the time of wedding, men think that here is a woman who was identified as a daughter is now, and that ownership, and that women are treated in many cultures still as objects, and that ownership, when it is transferred from the father or the brother or the patriarch of the family to another person who might be the husband, then that means that that person is wali, the legal guardian, or who controls that woman, or the woman is identified. And if a woman would do something that is beyond the family honor or is considered bad for the family, whether it's marrying a man of a choice or wanting to have a relationship, or just being herself and going out. And on these flimsy accounts, even when women are maltreated, and when as a community we don't speak about it, then that means that we are kind of supporting it. We are reinforcing the kind of cultural complexity that we have brought here, where we as women were treated as half subjects, objects, only in relationship to a man, and as half legal citizens or half legal person, then that means that those behaviors would continue despite the fact that we are living in an environment where we are full citizens, where there are all these wonderful services and counseling services and support available to get out of those relationships. And I would end it here that we need to talk more about it within our communities. If we don't talk about it and we don't talk about it to our daughters and to our sons, the future generation unfortunately would be just suffering from those kind of complexities the way our previous generations or even my own generation has suffered from. Thank you.
Dr. Rashid, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your vast knowledge with us tonight. Ladies